Hey everyone, I'm Benjamin Bryant from Bryant McKinnon Lawyers here in Coffs Harbour, and this is Heather McKinnon, my business partner. Hello, Heather.
Morning, Benjamin.
Good morning. Here we are. We are launching episode 51 of our little podcast program, The Family Matters Show. 51 is not a small number.
No, it's an amazing record.
Great effort. And look, in the past, more recently, we've had clinical psychologist Warwick McClellan. We've had a couple of former judges, family law judges. We've had Robin Sexton and we've had Colin Forrest. This episode 51, is you and me. Just you and me.
Back to our community.
Back to our community, which is great because it's really important for us to handle the big topics like power imbalances and mediation and Indigenous lists with the family law courts, but it's also really important for us to listen to the community and to answer the questions that are going around.
Yeah.
And for us, the questions that we get are not silly questions, they're questions we get all of the time. And so we like to so we know which ones are really important to you guys. And so that's what we try and get in the answer. And this episode 51, there were some usual questions that we get, Heather, but there was also a few unique questions, I must say, some very particular circumstance type questions. I'm including this one. If someone goes to prison, if let's say a father goes to prison, the listener said, what do we do with the arrangements for the children? Can we put parenting arrangements in place, or is prison enough to say, that's it?
Yeah, it's a really important topic because people don't realise that I think it's something like half the prison population are parents. So imagine how many children there are involved in that in Australia at any given time.
That's right. And like every other, parenting matter before the court, it is about a risk assessment, making sure children are safe and making sure the arrangements best promote their best interests. So a lot of the connotation, obviously, if someone's gone to prison, they've done something pretty bad. So there's an obvious risk like that. But also, you've been involved in matters when there's been children spending regular time with their parent in prisons. And you say, even there's some, let's say the lower grade prisons have barbecue areas and family facilities and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a nasty situation.
Absolutely. And you've got to remember that there's heaps of Australians on remand. The biggest part of the prison population are people who actually are just bail refused. No one's determined whether they're guilty.
Yeah.
So it's very complex, and little ones need to know that their parents safe.
Just not permanent detention. So, Joe. All right, next one we had was talking about costs, which is a huge issue, of course, for people. People, when I think of lawyers, I think of expense, I think of costs. And so we try our best to try and manage our clients' expectations into costs and also answer any questions that the community has about costs. And one of the questions that we had about costs was whether a barrister and a solicitor needed to attend a mediation, or is that overkill?
Yeah, and we went into a lot of detail about when you might use a big, powerful team and when that might not be appropriate to help people gauge whether they should be looking at that dual team. Most of it's about resourcing and about the size of the dispute and the complexity of the dispute. Yeah. But I think we did a pretty good job at giving people an overview.
And I think also one of the points that I touched on was, just be honest. Just have that conversation with your lawyer. We use fixed fees here, so, we never charge a client for something that they haven't already been forewarned about, kind of thing. And I think encourage people to have that conversation, that dialogue. If there is a need for a barrister and a solicitor, why? Yeah. Why am I incurring these costs? And there should be a good reason for it. Let us have the discussion.
And I always talk about, it's the same as going to your GP, and the GP has to work out with you when a specialist needs to be brought in. Same deal.
Absolutely. And also, Heather, there was another question about relocation, of course. In Coffs Harbour, being right between Brisbane and Sydney, we get a lot of relocation and also international relocations, I must say, this year in particular. One listener wanted to know they had 50-50 parenting arrangements by way of court order in place, but now the ex is going to relocate. Whether they needed to rip up the orders, get new orders, or what?
Yeah, look, and every situation's different because, as people have heard us talk about before, the studies 12 months after a court's made a decision in relation to children reveal that most parents are doing something completely different from what the judge ordered. So every case is different, but this is a classic where people think that they're going to be set in the same geographical area until the children become adults. But Australia doesn't work like that. And so often parents have got to make big decisions when job offers come up, partners remarry, or another one we've got at the moment is complex medical issues with children, and whether children should be able to move with one parent into a capital city where their medical needs can be met.
And I think it's fair to say, Heather, as well, is that at this point there's a difference between legal advice and legal representation. So even if you don't need to get the lawyers involved to get a new agreement or, formalise what you intend to do, at least get the legal advice. Yeah. So you know the advantages and the disadvantages of what you're going to do. And that way you can move forward with or without a lawyer and knowing, what's going to, how it's going to play out, essentially.
Absolutely.
All right, there were many more great questions that we discussed on episode 51, but I think that's it for us now, Heather. All right, to listen to the full podcast, head to bryantmckinnon.com.au, episode 51 we're talking about, or you can search for the Family Matters Show podcast wherever you get podcasts.